Hey everyone, my name is Austin Schur with We Write About Music, and today I'm here with Jeremy Schonfeld, who is fresh off the release of his first new album in 9 years, Brooklyn to Beacon. We're thrilled to have him on. Jeremy, how are you doing today? How are things by you?
These are great, man. Thanks for having me. Very, very great to be here.
Absolutely. Well, I gotta say, before we get into the music, I've been listening to the record basically nonstop since it's come out, a couple
Ah,
weeks ago at this point, and it's seriously fantastic.
thank you, man. Appreciate
So
it.
congratulations on that. I wanted to kind of kick things off and say, lyrically on the record, there's a lot going on. What type of life experiences did you pull from in order to kind of craft these songs?
Well, there was a lot going on. It was sort of a culmination of a few things. I I turned 50 at the in January this year, and so there was kind of that getting to a certain age, um, that kind of journey. Also, we had after 27 years of being a New Yorker and being in the city and doing that kind of life, my wife and family and I, we decided to leave the city and move upstate to Beacon, hence the name Brooklyn to Beacon. And so there was sort of a lot of change that had occurred, and a lot that I think over time I had a lot of thoughts, a lot of things that some of the songs had been written for a while or had been, percolating for a while. And when I decided it was finally time to really, put a full album down, I generally sort of think conceptually anyway. My previous album was a big concept album, and I've done a lot
Mhm.
of conceptual pieces and storytelling, theatrical storytelling, and so it all sort of kind of fell into place for me when I put these songs together, and when I with the producers I worked with, Will, Brandon, and Lee. Um, when we sat down with a number of songs and sort of said, these are the ones that really seem to kind of stick and fit into this lean 10 song album.
Sure. Did you or I mean, it sounds like you had a lot of songs that you cut down in order to make this, or was it 10 songs total?
No, we didn't. So I always have. There's a lot of music. I have a lot of songs,
Sure.
and I had and of course over a number of years of not having them in any official kind of album format, there were even more. So I had already kind of come up with, really what happened was I came up with two albums, and I had
Oh,
originally thought of doing a double album of one where it was me performing music and one where I had guests. Since I've written, for theater and for other artists, I thought maybe I would kind of do like a, two halves of who I am as an artist. When I was talking though with one of my much younger producing partners, Brandon Morrison, he was actually the one who sort of said, I was kind of hemming and hawing about it a little bit because I've spent a lot of time behind behind the table looking at other people doing things. I've also spent a lot of time, sort of on stage in front of audiences. And I guess as I came to the age that I'm at and with the experiences, uh, there was a lot of that. Where am I supposed to be? Is this about legacy? Is it about being an artist and continuing to be an
sure.
artist? Is it about both? And Brandon was the one who said, I really think you need to make an album. I'd love to hear you do one, sing one, write one, and just do a thing. And you can always bring in singers and other people, and you can always record those things. But to get that one, full album of sitting and working with people and doing something in kind of like a, an experiential way, as we did, uh, is something that you want to get a certain feel for something and have it sort of pervasive throughout the entire album. So I'm really glad that we ended up going that way, and I did end up going from whatever, and even then when I cut that down, I still had probably twice as many songs, but I brought those to the table, and we quickly kind of made it down to 12 or 14, and then the 10 that are on the album.
Nice. Well, I mean, it sounds like there's a ton in the library for the future.
Oh yeah, man, I'm ready. Put me back in the studio. I'm ready for the next one.
Let this one kind of marinate for a little bit, just
Exactly.
and then just know that you've got more on the way.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Um, In terms of sound, though, what sort of evolution do you feel that you went through from your previous record compared to this one? Maybe sound, I guess life. You kind of went through life.
Yeah, well, uh, it was a very different project. The last album I made was an album called Iron and Coal, and it was a concept album about really about my experiences growing up under the shadows of the Holocaust. My father being an Auschwitz survivor,
Mhm.
and it's sort of a conceptual album about a father and a son, really, and a father who survives and goes through all the emotional turmoil and turbulence of surviving all the way through to the birth of his son, and simultaneously a son who's trying to come out from under the shadows of being this child of a Holocaust survivor once his father has passed away. So for me, it was a very, very emotional, very specific journey that I had spent years trying to decide when I was ready to make, and then I finally did it, and I recorded that album in Vienna, Austria,
Nice.
and it's huge, it's orchestral, and when we performed that in the world premiere was at the Strathmore in Bethesda, and we had 230 people on stage, huge multimedia. It's kind of
Wow.
by like The Wall meets Bernstein's Mass in a way, and it's a big, big piece. Um,
That's
so,
incredible.
yeah, well, thank you. I'm very, yeah, I'm very proud. I never thought. So when I made that album, my father passed away the day that it was mastered, and
Oh, sorry to hear that.
I thank you, and it took a very, very long time to crawl out of that hole, and to really realize in performance what that album was going to be. And it wasn't until 2018 that we actually performed the entire thing. I performed it a couple of occasions previous to that, but um, so so for me, I had to make a decision because I'd spent so much time writing. I write shows. I've written musicals or pieces that are theatrical in nature. I think, and as I always tell people, for me, I write theater not because of my great love for all things musical theater. I write because I have a great love for telling stories through music. That's it. So for one song cycle, show, operatic, multimedia, whatever, it's telling stories, particularly stories that wouldn't necessarily um, be ripe for musicalization. A lot of people wouldn't think of them as being adaptable types of things. Um, but anyway, so when I came to this, I was coming at it from a very different place, in a place of being settled, in a place of having to decide that it was okay to give myself to permission to really actually just do something, because I wanted to be a songwriter again. I just wanted to be a
Mhm.
guy who sometimes, not just sometimes, hopefully a lot of the time, sits down at a piano and writes songs. And that's okay to just do that. Doesn't have to be this huge exploration of, massive proportions every time I do it. So that's kind of what this was. This was sort of like me giving myself permission to record a bunch of songs and put out an album that to me felt very um, kind of has a throwback feel in terms of some of there's a little bit of the 70s thing
Absolutely.
creeping into it, which I really love. I love working up here. I worked with a bunch of people I'd never worked with before.
Mhm.
And Yeah, and there's a lot more joy. There's some love and there's joy and warmth in this thing. It's a very warm, rich, textured album that I was it really I came together beautifully. I was very proud of the guys I worked with on this. So
Yeah,
anyway,
I mean, besides you, obviously, the production on it is beautiful. So, I mean, I'm
yeah,
sure the whole team put a lot of love and care into it. It really shows.
thank you. I appreciate that. And I'll definitely give a
Yeah.
shout out to the guys at the building who
Yeah, please
really helped me
do.
do that. They do.
Um,
They're actually a wonderful. They're a wonderful band in their own right. They're a
mhm.
band called the Restless Age,
Okay.
and they're a trio, and just those guys. And as a trio, they also produce together, which is sort of an extraordinary thing because in a lot of ways it can be hard to just collaborate with one person,
Right.
to butt heads. That this is a trio of people who are there, and but you know what? It was a very seamless and easy collaboration because they just feed off of each other so well, and they're very, very loose. Plus, they all cover. they cover so much ground musically that for me it's easier to realize a lot of my work in just within that small group. So yeah, so it's a lovely crew.
Nice, nice. So who would you say some of your musical influences are?
That's a good question. It can really be varied because, as I said, for me, it's telling stories through music. So, uh, it's really it becomes about what I like and whether
Right.
what the story sort of dictates the genre, if you will.
Mhm.
And I want to be as authentic within that genre as possible. So for me, obviously I'm a piano man. So, I came at it with the storytelling of Billy Joel,
It
who I,
shows. It's one of the first things that I kinda connected it to when I was listening.
yeah,
That and
well,
honestly, like a little Bruce Springsteen-esque as well.
there's absolutely,
Yeah.
especially in in his sort of, in his years, as he's got this new album, and I forget the name of it, but I
Yeah,
saw
I listened to it the other day, it was really good.
it's really, it's again, he's getting there's the storytelling aspect, but he's also very, very sort of deep emotionally into his, and conceptually. And yeah, I would say absolutely. I take that certainly as a big compliment as well. I we were gonna before we moved to Beacon, we were very, very close to moving to Nashville because I'd spent a lot of time working down there as well, and brought a few singers with me to do some work. And So there's, for me, some of the bluegrass and some of the country that you hear on the album is really also very close to my heart. And then some of the Texas songwriters, like there's a little bit of Guy Clark in there. There's a little bit of, you don't necessarily always
Yeah.
hear it, but I, I who can't, you have to love some of what's her name? Um, uh, it's Nashville.
Sure.
How's that? But I'm not talking about the pop Nashville as much as I'm talking about some of the soulful, more bluegrassy
Oh, of
roots.
course.
Um, and yeah, so I think that kind of. But I also, it's fun. This album isn't really reflective of it as much. But I'm also a guy. I love some rock.
Who
I mean,
doesn't?
so I'll throw it in there. I threw a little bit, there's a little Supertramp in there. Um, there's a little bit of 70s kind of rock. Some of the stuff that's like, there's the Queen thing. There's the ELO, the big Jeff Lynne influence on this
Right,
album.
right.
Just set him right up front. Because I love, especially like songs like Hello Superstar, when you have these lush harmonies and
Mhm.
some of those sort of off kind of little things like the rooster crowing in the background, these little kind of cute touches that were like, that comes with some of that English producing territory. So, you blend it all together and then there you go.
So it sounds like there's a lot going on within your personal taste and the music. But what I really want to know is if you had to pick a single song on the record that you feel kind of defines the overall sound, which track would it be?
Wow, that is a tough one, right? Um, well,
Doesn't
I mean,
necessarily need to be your favorite, just the one that
yeah,
kind of encompasses,
sure.
what you're about.
Uh, well, if I could pick two, how's that? I'll
Sure.
start with that.
There are no
A
rules
little bit.
here.
Yeah, there's
You
no.
can do whatever you want.
Um, well, I think that a lot of people, the first song that I released and the first video that I produced, actually that we made in New Zealand while I was there for 4 months during the initial lockdown. My wife's a New Zealander, and
Oh,
we
wow.
happened to we were there visiting family
Should have
when
stayed.
everything kind of, yeah, so we just stayed. We kept extending our stay,
Oh, okay, okay.
and so when we shot this video for the first song on the album, a song called "Proof of Rain." And for me, that there are a few of the songs on the album that are actually these journeys
Mhm.
within the song, and that one kind of encapsulates a lot, both musically. It has a lot of that subtle, sort of nuanced um, and lush approach stylistically, and then lyrically, it's a song within three sections of looking at you know me as a boy and the sounds that kind of entered my brain and inspired me to think musically and to want to hear more. And then the young man who's struggling for his identity and
Mm.
struggling to kind of break away and prove that it's all of the struggle that he's going through is worth it, and that he's destined for something greater. And then then the guy who I am now, and the man who's um, a little bit more reflective and a little bit more you know looking back on some of the on the life that he's had, and then also at this stage looking forward to see kind of what it is that it's going to be, and what it is that what is I'm still doing. Have I done what I wanted to do? Did I chase it hard enough? And I think so from a I think from an emotional perspective, that song encapsulates a lot.
Okay.
And if I had to say a second song, actually, I would probably, um, gosh, I think that man, you know what? I'll stick with that one. But I will say that there's some very personal work. Another one that has sort of that kind of lush feel is the song "Our Love," which
Okay.
is has that kind of I'm not alone. The 10cc song. We referenced that a little bit on the production side. So that's where you can get again some of that more of that 70s thing that I was going for with this when I was going for you know that some throwback kind of sonically, some of those earworms.
Okay, great. So, I'm glad that you gave that kind of long-winded answer, which is perfect. No,
So,
no, 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 no.
they're
It's
all pretty
fine. It's
long
fine.
for me, man. So
I'm telling you, it's fine because on the other hand, if you had to pick a song to convince a listener to listen to the rest of the record, which would it
wow,
be?
that's wow, man. That's a good question, man.
Now I'm going to make a rule for this one. You only get one song.
Okay,
Okay.
all right. The old man.
Okay. Okay.
The old man. The old man is uh and by the way, the old man is when you listen to it, of course, through the computer or even on a CD, the old man and Hello Superstar are very, very close, but they're not connected. My actual intention, and if we ever, do the vinyl that I really want to do for this thing, my intention is that those songs are actually meant to be connected. It's meant to
Okay.
be one song that goes right into the other. Again, thinking about some of that, that I do that on a lot of my work. I like to flow at one song that goes directly into another, and that's what's meant to happen. But the song "The Old Man," I think, is an interesting sort of a unique stylistically. I mean, I rap on it. Basically do
Of
like
course. Of
I do.
course.
I kind of like a little. No one's going to expect that from me. I mean, it's melodic and it's very fast spoken thing. I mean, it's more of a patter than it is a rap, and it's very
Sure.
theatrical in that sense. Um, but it is for a very specific reason.
Mhm.
It's a very specific kind of song that I think that if you listen to that song, you think, oh well, maybe you know me. But
Okay.
I mean, when I talk about things fitting in, like I love what I love is, and I do this on Iron and Coal, and I think I've tried to do this on another one of my concept albums, Drift, is that when you have the entire album laid out and when you listen to the entire thing, it's an experience.
Mhm.
But within that experience, you should be able to pull out the individual songs and enjoy those without having to feel like you have to listen to the entire thing. That being said,
Sure.
when you plug them back in, they make sense. That's one of the songs that I feel makes sense on the album really well when you plug it into the entirety of the experience of aging and battling the demons of someone who's you know uh, wakes up in the middle of the night feeling like he's got to wrestle his demons. And I think so I stylistically I wanted to kind of bring a little of that drama and tension in, and but it is
Sure.
a little bit, it's definitely a little bit theatrical, in
Well,
a
that's
rock
okay though,
theatrical.
because yeah, living in kind of a playlist world,
Yeah,
if someone doesn't know who you are and they come across a single song, you
yeah,
kind of want that to be the representation so that when they do go back to listen to the album, it does have that cohesive feel. So it's
yeah,
like you want to have singles, you want to have ones where you can just listen them standalone, But in a world where people find one song and then dig into the artist, you kind of need to have those specific songs. So
I
I'm
I
really happy
I
that you said that it kind of encompasses, your overall sound.
I agree. Look, I mean, there is there was a time where people made albums much more
Right.
than they made songs and singles, and the concentration was, let me make a full piece
Right.
that that works, and that has, flow, and it has a journey that you go on as the listener, and the intention was that the listener would go through the entire journey. um, and then, and if there, and obviously you would hope that there's a single, or that, the record label would pull a single out.
Sure.
Sometimes you would just know that there was one in there, or whatever.
Hmm.
I mean, everybody's got to be thinking business mindedly. But that
Right.
being said, I think that, um, that's a lovely bygone era, and it's one that, if I had to carry the mantle for anything, it would be, for, for these conceptual storytelling albums.
Yeah.
Because I think that that's much more of an artistic way of trying to approach things, and, which is not to slam anybody else, but I
No,
think
no,
it's,
no. Well, it's a streaming world versus, you go to a record store even 30 years ago at this point. And I mean, I'm one to talk because I'm, younger, but still, like, I collect records and I have my parents' record collection, and I still love sitting with an album, old or new, that kind of has that cohesive feel and it tells a story from start to finish. The sound isn't all over the place, and
yeah,
it's one big listen. So the
yeah,
fact that there are still people in this world making those types of albums gives hope. You know what I mean?
I very much appreciate that, and I'm 100% on board with what you just said.
Happy to hear. So kind of apart from your music specifically, what have you been listening to in your free time, in your off time? What kind of brings you joy in terms of, digressing from your work and just kind of listening for fun?
That's also an interesting question, um, because I have young kids.
Mhm.
So, I have an older, I have a 24-year-old daughter, an 8-year-old son, and a 3-year-old daughter. And, and I spend so much time. My 8-year-old son, Gus, who's actually featured, he's in both videos, but particularly featured in the first video for Proof of Rain. Um, is he's constantly singing his face off, and he's constantly making music, and he wants me to sit and, collaborate with him. So I spend actually quite a bit of time sitting and listening to him sing, and playing around on the piano, or, even messing around with some equipment here to try to do that, which is not the answer you would expect, but it does take up a lot of time. And of course, Daniel Tiger and other things that are kid related. But for me
Sure.
personally, for me personally, there's a couple of answers. One is, if I'm up here in my attic, where I've been doing some shooting and some things up,
Mhm.
some recording stuff up here. That's where my record collection is. So when
Okay.
I get the time, I can come up here, and that's where I really go into. Um, that's where you really do want to listen to Steely Dan. I want to listen to Steely Dan up here. I want to listen to the band up here. I want to listen to Gary Wright, and Dreamweaver, and that the whole album, which is actually quite a wonderful album in a lot of ways. I want to listen to, I'll throw on. I come from jazz too, so I'll
Mhm.
throw on, uh, uh, just whatever kind of jazz. I've got a lot. I've got my parents' collection as well, so I've got some of their jazz, as well as a bunch of my own. But, but then I've also kind of, when we moved here, this is the home of Pete Seeger,
Oh.
and you have a lot of his, his minions who are still here, and I think that there are wonderful. There's a wonderful song. Actually, Beacon in the Hudson Valley is a wonderful artistic, uh, songwriter, storyteller area. There's rich, rich. It's crazy. I feel like I've got more artists living around me here than I did in Brooklyn when we left.
Oh, wow.
And, so I get to listen to a lot of really talented people. I mean, not as many now, because we're, of course, not seeing as many people.
Sure.
But, but and then, so they bring to me. I love to listen to, as I mentioned, like Guy Clark or Towns Van Zandt, and some of the, you know, sometimes I can be very lyric heavy. So it's nice when it's when there are artists who can say so much with so little, with so few words, and just sparse chords,
Mhm.
and so I'll spend some time doing that too. And then, lastly, I'll just get in the car and I throw on the rock, man, and they seem to constantly be
Yeah,
playing. It's either AC/DC or Sabbath or something. And you know what? I'm totally down with that too. There's
of
never any
course.
problem for me to hear a little bit of Thunderstruck or something when I'm driving. So
No, I mean, hey, even AC/DC put out a new album like 2 weeks ago at this point, and it's actually pretty good,
I
I
mean,
gotta say.
those
Yeah,
guys have
not
been doing the
bad.
same thing
Mhm.
for what?
Right, well, they have the formula down, they know
They
what people
totally
want,
did, man. If it ain't broke, and they've totally, it's like them
basically.
and ZZ Top, man. They're just some people who just kind of
Right.
they nailed it, and they just keep nailing it.
Yeah, people ask for it, they're delivering. It's
But
not like they need to make new music. The
no,
fact that they were even inspired to do so is kinda crazy, but
it is. But I try to, I try to, I want to engage in some of the newer stuff that's
yeah.
out there, and I try to, my son and I know my older daughter are also very much more into this sort of the pop world, and my
Mhm.
daughter was always, she was the one, like, I had to get her when I had my friends at the Today Show. I had to get her at 4:30 in the morning so that she could, see One Direction, and
Nice.
Jonas
Yeah,
Brothers,
yeah.
all the stuff. And she's probably saw more concerts than I did, in my adult life by the time she was a teenager. Um, so I appreciate, and I try to hear what's going on, and I've got the connection. I wrote both of Frankie Grande's songs, his singles. So I have and so the Ariana Grande, and she gets a lot of play in this house too, and
I'm sure.
so
I mean, yeah, there's a lot out there in terms of pop. There's a lot of good. There's, obviously a lot of bad, but it's
yes,
intimidating because there's so much of it. It's never been easier to become an artist, and it's never been more accessible to find a million new people that you might like. So it's
yeah.
kind of just being able to sift through it all.
Oh, I know, and it's never been. It's funny because, as you said, it's never the flip side of that is that it's never been easier to become an artist, but it's never been more difficult to actually make a living at it.
Yes, exactly. Oh, that's a whole nother conversation, but yeah,
Well,
it's
that'll be our
crazy.
next 10 questions.
Yeah, seriously. I did kind of want to wrap things up though.
Sure, sure.
And I wanted to ask one more question for you.
Yeah.
What message would you like to pass off to the listeners? And more importantly, where can they find your music?
Well, I'll start with the last part.
Yeah.
I've The new album Brooklyn to Beacon is available at Deco Entertainment. That's the label that I signed this album to, and you can find it also everywhere.
Sure.
Most of my music that I've done on my albums, like Iron and Cold, Drift, and Blue Skies and All, 37 Notebooks, and a couple of other things that I was on, are also available electronically and everywhere you want to find them. But you can, the best place, I would say, you know, I do have someone working for me now, trying to keep, because I'm horrible with the social media stuff. So I have someone who's actually working to keep up my website and to make sure that I've got new things that whenever I put them out, they go up there. So I have a store there that has all of my, have a bunch of stuff. I even have something that I haven't really even advertised, which is just I took 20 songs, um, and like 20 for 2020, I guess, and I put 20 songs together on like a compilation, many that are not released on any album,
Oh,
and I have that available also at the website. So go to jeremyschonfeld.com, and just check through some things, listen to some things, whatever, and you can pick,
absolutely.
make your own little playlist of stuff.
Yeah, and we'll
Um,
be linking to all those links or all the important stuff in the article as
I
well.
appreciate that.
Of course.
And as far as the message is concerned, uh, I think I think that my mission, and I've been doing this a long time, and I've worn a lot of hats, and I've been in a lot of different kinds of some wonderful situations, and some some pretty sad ones, or whatever you want to call it. I think that's the artist journey. But I think that when it comes to my personal my personal takeaway and my personal mission uh, is uh, is about the importance of telling stories and making uh, of saying something, having something to say, and saying it instead of saying it through your social medias and all the things that we all spend a lot of times, perusing and 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 posting things on. I would say try to say it through your art. I think it's really important that there's a tradition that needs to continue, and that tradition of artists, particularly musicians, but any artist. We are the ones who really have a lot to say about our time. And when people look back, they're going to look back at the art. They're going to look back at the music. They're going to look back at the films. They're going to look back at those are that's where they're going to understand where who we were, what was going on, how people felt, the
Right.
history. We tell those stories, and I think it's incredibly important um, to be brave and to make sure that you tell those stories and reach just a little bit beyond your grasp and tell stories that you necessarily you don't feel entirely comfortable telling. So that you can continue to hone your craft and get more tools on your tool belt as you get older and you develop as an artist. You may be a 20 something or a late teen now and think you've got everything. But I'm going to tell you something. If you're lucky enough, you're going to be an artist for your whole life. And one day you may be, like me, you may be a 50-year-old singer, songwriter, composer, and you still have things to say.
Right.
So keep saying them and keep building on what you do. And don't ever think that you've reached the limits of what your potential are, because I guarantee there's tons more to learn. And I certainly feel like I still have tons more to learn. So I guess that's all of it wrapped up into a long
That was
message.
beautiful. I couldn't have asked for a better answer. Thank you so much. I think that's
Absolutely.
probably the perfect place to kind of stop here.
Yeah.
So Jeremy, thank you so much again for your time. What yeah, I mean we can't wait to maybe see you one day when concerts are a thing. But
Absolutely,
either
man.
way, really looking forward to it. We'll continue to listen and I hope we can speak again soon.
Absolutely, man. My pleasure. I'd be more than happy to. Thanks a lot,
Awesome.
and take care and be safe. All right.
Yeah, have a great rest of your night. We'll speak soon.
Too. Take
All right,
care.
bye bye.